But I think that's a representative question. Maybe we'll start with it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us here our leader, which I hope most of you have got copies of the text. If not, we can arrange that you all get the actual copy of the text. Now, of course, it is to be expected that we'll have questions even around aspects that were raised in a different sort of way with her husband, with her at home. And Comrade Walter Sisulu, you've already met. He's joining us at the press conference, and Comrade Albertina Sisulu. Try to be representative of all the sides, if there are any sides at this conference, but I'll start from the left-hand side. Not that because I'm a leftist or anything, but I'll start from the left and move towards the right. So if I miss you, I'll probably come back to you on the left. Can we start with the first question at the center?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Mandela. Kevin Dunn of ITN of London. Can you tell us how you feel on your first morning as a free man?
Before I respond to that question, I think it proper for us to apologize for the failure of the press conference yesterday. Our marshals did exceptionally good work, but the crowd was too big, and it became impossible for us to keep to our programs. And we very much regret that we could not fulfill that engagement. Having said that, I want to assure you that I'm absolutely excited to be out. I'm also excited to have the opportunity of addressing you, because throughout these difficult years in prison, the press, both locally and foreign, have been a brick to us. I think it was originally the intention of the government that we should be forgotten, and that their leaders of the homelands, Pandostans, and all those who work within government structures should be built up and that which should be forgotten. It was the press that kept the memory of those who had been imprisoned for offenses which they committed in the course of their political activities. It was the press that never forgot us. And we are therefore indebted to you, and I'm happy to be with you this morning.
It's John.
Mr. Mandela, John Madison from National Public Radio. In the light of your reference in your speech yesterday to the fact that leaders must be elected by the National Conference of the ANC,
No person has the right in our organization to determine what his role is in the course of the struggle. We are loyal and disciplined members of the organization. It is the organization that will determine what role we should play. It is my intention to go to Lusaka at the earliest possible convenience. They will tell me what role I should play. Well, I think it's a normal thing for the government to decide at some stage to release a prisoner. They had already released Comrade Walter and others, and my release was a natural development of events to the promotion of peace in the country. But I have done so as part and parcel of the decisions and campaigns which have been taken and launched by the ANC. There's no conflict whatsoever. There is not a single political organization in this country, inside and outside Parliament, which can ever compare with the ANC in its total commitment to peace. And the armed struggle is merely defensive. It's a defensive act against the violence of apartheid. But we remain committed to peace. And if the government gives us the opportunity, if they normalize the situation, we are ready to make a positive contribution towards the peaceful settlement of the problems of this country.
Yeah, I'll have to... Yes, yourself.
Yes, John Carlin of The Independent of London. Mr. Mandela, the government's new battle cry seems to be protection for minority rights in the new negotiated constitution. Do you detect a shift here away maybe from group rights? And do you see any room for accommodation here between the ANC and the government?
The ANC is very much concerned to address the question of the concern of whites over the demand of one person, one vote. And they insist on structural guarantees, that is the whites, to ensure that the realization of this demand does not result in the domination of whites by blacks. We understand those fears, and the ANC is concerned to address that problem and to find a solution which will suit both the blacks and the whites in this country. It's a very good question because there has been a lot of misunderstanding about it. I have been having discussions with the government for the last 3 years on two separate but related questions. The first one, in which I have been negotiating with the government, was the release of my colleagues, Mr. Sisulu and others. As far as that is concerned, I have been negotiating. But the second issue has been one of a meeting between the ANC and the government. And there I have been acting purely as a facilitator to bring these two major political organization bodies to the negotiating table. In the course of my attempt to secure results on these two, I have met a number of cabinet ministers. The first, of course, was Mr. Kobe Kutsie. I've had countless meetings with him. The second has been Dr. Gerrit Viljoen, whom I have met now for about 4 times since he took over this new portfolio. As you know, I have met State President P.W. Botha. That meeting has been misunderstood. There is a suggestion that this was a propaganda ploy on the part of a president who was retiring. It's not so. That meeting was requested by me, and the former state president merely responded to my request to see him. Secondly, it has been suggested that this was an attempt on the part of the former state president to do something that would embarrass Mr. de Klerk. And that is not so. Mr. de Klerk was involved right at the outset in the arrangements for this meeting, was kept informed. And he himself was in line with the fact that this discussion should take place.
Yes.
David Zucchino from the Philadelphia Inquirer. The government has indicated that you are willing to act as a mediator.
Well, in a sense, I have been acting as a mediator because I believe that the first step towards the solution of our problems is a meeting between the ANC and the government. So I have been playing that role. But now that I'm released, it is for the ANC to determine what role I should play.
Somehow that meeting did not happen. Could you tell us what exactly the circumstances?
Well, it is correct to say that I was supposed to meet the state president. But that meeting did not take place because you people knew about it and you made it impossible for us to meet.
Mr. Mandela, Patrick Lawrence for the Star.
Oh yes, I'm happy to see you.
Mr. Mandela, the Bantustans that have been created since you were in prison, what is their future from the perspective of the ANC?
Well, the ANC has called upon them to join the struggle, and I think that is a correct policy. You must remember that some of them, although we disagree with their politics, some of them are quite innocent, and they are men, you see, who have served the community in one way or the other, and nothing would please us more than that they should join us.
Can I ask on the left to be a bit more patient? As indicated, I'll come back to you guys that side. Can I have you on that?
Robert von Lucius, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. What do you plan to enhance black unity in the direction of PAC and in the direction of Inkatha, now specifically with the Peter Maritzburg situation?
No single person can undertake such an enormous task. It is the duty of the political organization, in particular the ANC, to determine in what way can we increase the momentum of unity among black organizations. And they'll give me instructions.
What is your view about economic sanctions? Do you intend to take up these sanctions invitations?
Everything that we set out to achieve through sanctions is still the same. Nothing has changed. you must remember that the demand in this country is for a non-racial society. We are very far from that. And it is too early for anybody to expect us to call for the lifting of sanctions. But having said that, I would like to add that there is nothing that worries us as the ANC than the fact that we should be involved in politics of confrontation. And we will seize the earliest opportunity of settling our problems through peaceful means.
Sorry, my second part of my question, could you answer that?
Just repeat it, please.
Will you take up Mrs. Thatcher's invitation to visit London?
Well, an invitation from a British Prime Minister is something very important. And we can't treat it very lightly. But on this question, I will have to be advised by the ANC.
Mr. Mandela, Gavin Bell of the Times, London. You've spent almost half of your life in prison, sir. On a purely personal level, is there any bitterness in you?
Well, I have lost a great deal over these 27 years. And my wife has been under all sorts of pressures. And it is not a nice feeling for a man to see his family struggling without security, without the dignity of the head of the family around. But despite the hard times that we've had in prison, we have also had the opportunity to think about problems. And it's an opportunity which is also very rewarding in that regard. And you learn to get used to your circumstances. And in prison there have been men, who are very good in the sense that they understand our point of view, and they do everything to try and make you as happy as possible. And that has wiped out any bitterness which a man could have.
Dave Ottaway from the Washington Post. Could you tell us, on the basis of your talk so far, how close you feel you all are to having a meeting with the government, between the ANC and the government? How close are you to getting...
Well, I am very confident that that day is not very far. One thing I have been able to assess is that Mr. de Klerk is a man of integrity. And as I said yesterday, he seems to be fully aware of the danger to a public figure of making undertakings which he fails to honor. And I think that is a very promising sign. In my discussions with him, he has been very flexible. And but as an organization, of course, we are concerned and not so much with the personal virtues of an individual. Our policy and strategies are determined by the harsh reality of the fact that the National Party has got a policy which is not so progressive. And that is what determines our attitude. But I am confident that if Mr. de Klerk is able to carry the National Party with him in the new line that he has taken, that he himself wants to normalize the situation as soon as possible. And therefore, I think that very soon the obstacles to negotiation will be removed. And it will be possible for us to sit down and talk.
Okay, I'm approaching the right wing. I'll try to move very fast here. Yes, Srini.
Thank you.
Oh, Strin's here. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Okay, boy. That should be a matter of no concern. We have differences with Dr. Buthelezi. Firstly, on the question of violence, the use of violence. Secondly, on the attitude towards government structures, and thirdly, on questions of sanctions. These are fundamental differences. But nevertheless, he is a figure with a following. It may not be as big, may not command as much resources as we command, but he has a following. And it seems to me correct to try and settle problems in which he is involved, to settle them amicably. And I wrote to him because I didn't think it was correct that Africans, blacks, should be killing one another. And that situation we must try and solve.
Mike.
Michael, from BBC Radio. You spoke yesterday about...
Well, I don't think it would be proper for me to go into any specifics here, except just to stress that this is a problem we are fully aware of. And it is one of our most important duties to address this problem. Whites are fellow South Africans, and we want them to feel safe, and that we appreciate the contribution they have made towards the development of this country.
A leader of the African countries who has linked in South Africa.
Well, South Africa is a very important country, and if there is an internal solution, South Africa will play a major role in promoting developments in various fields, which today require immediate attention in the sense that some of the problems are far beyond the resources of the African states around South Africa. And therefore, if an internal settlement is reached, I would urge that the relations between our country and Africa should be improved, and I would encourage such meetings.
I'm going to be arbitrary here. I'll have Subri from the right to give the last question here, and then I'll swing over to the left. And for the left, I'll start with the SAPC.
Well, if I had to decide the matter, I probably would feel that those countries, you see, who have supported us very strongly, remember the contribution of Judge Shapler very well, and that would be my preference. But all these things are in the hands of the ANC. They will plan whatever trips I propose to take as a result of this invitation. But I have no doubt that they will consider India as one of the very first countries, you see, which we should visit.
Here's the next order. You'll cater, will speak, and then Mr. Corporal, and the lady here, and yourself, and then we'll tell the rest.
Well, I have no doubt that we are talking about the same thing. But if he regards the steps that he has taken so far as being sufficient for the normalization of the political situation in the country, then I differ with him. Because the state of emergency has to be lifted in its entirety. And also, political prisoners have to be released. And once we have removed these obstacles, then we will be entitled to say the situation has been normalized. Identical with those of the ANC. The question of the nationalization of the mines and similar sectors of the community is a fundamental policy of the ANC. And I believe that the ANC is quite correct in this attitude and that we should support it.
Mr. Nelson Mandela, Paddy Kay for Capital Radio. Do you intend returning to Transkei for a visit or to stay?
My home is in Johannesburg, but I was born in the Transkei, and it is proper for me to visit the area of my birth. And there are certain rites which I have to perform, and for that reason I will go down. And I also long to see the little stones on which I played as a child, the little rivers where I swam, and I'll go down. But my home, I'm stationed in Johannesburg.
You, yourself, and you over there. And we have about 10 minutes more left.
Mr. Mandela, Bob Simon from...
There has also been a great deal of misunderstanding on that question. My position was a simple one, that the question of my release can be approached from two angles. The first, from the relationship between a jailer and a prisoner. If the government released me under those conditions, then I would have no obligation whatsoever. There would be no continuity between the work I was doing inside prison and the work which the ANC might give me outside. But if they want to release me with my consent, on the basis that they don't want to release me into a vacuum, then they must normalize fully. In other words, the state of emergency should be lifted and political prisoners should be released. That was my attitude. Well, I can't specify a time. It can be lifted, you see, this morning. It can be lifted tomorrow. But we want it lifted before we can regard the situation as being normal.
Mr. Mandela, do you believe
Sorry.
that sanctions played an
The
important...
gentleman behind you.
Comrade Mandela, welcome.
Yes.
This is Terry Matera from BNS.
Oh, yes. How are you?
Okay. Comrade
I
Mandela,
thought you were very tall and stout and...
that's the father. Anyway, Comrade Mandela, the strides that the ANC has taken in terms of what has happened in the 1960s, how does that relate to your release now?
Well, I think these developments are breathtaking. And they are very inspiring. It is clear now that the masses of the people want to free themselves. They are no longer prepared to wait for the government to free them. That is a clear lesson that emerges from the demonstrations that have taken place.
In front of you, Teddy.
Do you believe that sanctions played an important role in creating the climate for your release, sir? What other important forces do you think were at play?
Well, the release is the result of the cumulative effect of many factors. There is the question of the internal mass struggle, which have reached a new level of intensity. There is the pressure which comes externally. Then, of course, even amongst the government, it's an experience we have had as early as the 1960s. They are not themselves unanimous on some of these things. There have been men who have been insisting that change is absolutely necessary. And I think that there are numbers within the government and within the National Party are increasing. And I think all these factors have contributed to my release.
Yes, yourself.
Person one vote, maybe by having separate voters' rolls or something like that?
No, I have said that I wouldn't like to go to any specifics at this time. This is, however, a matter which is regarded as extremely important by the ANC. And we will decide the actual structure of the guarantees that might be developed at the time when we are addressing this question.
James?
Mr. Mandela, James Robben.
And in the classes.
Mr. Mandela, Thomas Niemeyer from Germany. I write for Germany.
Oh, yes. Hey, there are a lot of German heroes here, yeah? Yes.
You said yesterday one sentence about the economy, and that was, our economy lies in ruins. Now, if we compare it to other countries in Africa, it's actually not so bad. Could you elaborate on what you mean when you...
Well, there are three important aspects we must consider when we are discussing the economy of a country. The question of full employment, the question of productivity, and the question of social responsibility. Once we can guarantee that there is progress in these three aspects, then the economy of the country is performing very well. But it is my impression that it is not performing well in the sense of these aspects which I've mentioned. And that is why I say it is in ruins.
Mr. Mandela, to speak to that use.
Well, these problems have to be tackled by the organization. My colleagues here, Mr. Sisulu and the other colleagues who were released with him, have given special attention to this question. And I will, of course, join them in the efforts which they are making